Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And got a few headlines here, starting off with the potential restarting of this bombing campaign, which here says Trump mulls Operation Sledgehammer. Interesting there, right? That they would call it Operation Sledgehammer. And I'll go into why in a second. If ceasefire collapses, but Iran has rearmed. The Pentagon is considering renaming the war with Iran from Operation Epic Fury, right, which makes you think of Revelation 12:12, the devil coming down upon you with great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Epic Fury is synonymous with great wrath. Okay, but now they want to rename it to Operation Sledgehammer. And I believe in the book of Jeremiah, I believe it's the book of Jeremiah, if I'm not mistaken, but I'll pull it up in a second. Esau, Edom, all right, or Babylon is also referred to as the hammer of the earth, right? How has the hammer of the earth ceased? So it's kind of interesting that they're going to call it Operation Sledgehammer. If President Trump orders a renewed full-scale bombing campaign against Iran, according to an NBC News report published Tuesday. The report came on the eve of day 75 since the U.S. and Israel launched the conflict. U.S. sources touted to NBC that the United States now has greater military capabilities in the region than it did before the U.S. and Israel launched the war on February 28th. Yeah, because they were moving a lot of military, forces over there to that region even before they launched the attack. And using this whole, ceasefire negotiation and agreements, they've been also able to amass and send a lot of military forces over there as well. Okay. It says, but U.S. intelligence is now also suggesting Iran's missile capability is getting back up and running as well. So just as you can think of it like reloading, right? The U.S. went and reloaded, they brought heavier artillery, but they're also saying that the same is true for the adversary dealing with Iran. After Iran had clearly withstood the shock and destruction of the opening days and couple weeks of major American and Israeli bombing raids over the cities and air bases, Trump belatedly ordered more warships, carriers, and troops into the region, after which the blockade of Iranian ports was eventually put in place. Now, something that also is important to do is understanding history, right? When you go and look at like previous wars, read about how they started, right? Previous times when the U.S. went and invaded foreign countries, and how that conflict started. What was the propaganda, the narrative they were pushing at the time? What were they saying about how quickly they could wrap it up and this, that, and the third? And then look at how it actually ended up playing out. Even some of the world wars, right? World War I and World War II, how they started off versus how they ended. And then looking at what's going on here, you can see that clearly this isn't something that's looking to just pass away, right? Once this thing is started, it's something that it's still ongoing. Right now, they're not actively bombing. They're talking about they're talking about getting back to it. But all this while, time is still passing. Right. Time is still moving. And the economy is still taking a greater and greater of a hit. OK. That's how prophecy goes sometimes. It's like a roller coaster. It goes up, it goes down, it turns right, left, all of that. Jumping down here, it says the reported name change appears part of the Trump administration's efforts to navigate around the War Powers Resolution, which is the 1973 law designed to limit executive war powers and reinforce Congress's constitutional authority to declare war. According to NBC, the name change would be to underscore how seriously the administration is considering resuming the war, and could allow Trump to argue that it restarts the 60-day clock that requires congressional authorization for war. So remember, even though they may not be highlighting this, they're also dealing with, the maneuvering around these legal measures and constraints around actually going to war, right? Because you still need Congress for that. So they're calling it an operation. They're using different terms and so on and so forth to sort of give them a bit of leeway and wiggle room. But one example being this name change here. But ultimately, we know what it is, right? We see it for what it actually is. There was a part in here as well that I wanted to get. Oh, right. This is a tweet that said, or a post that says, interesting how U.S. intelligence reports are fluctuating. One moment, Iran's military is obliterated. Another, it's retaining its capabilities. No leadership, then reports of serious cracks in the system. Then a conclusion that Mutaba, the Khamenei is consolidating power. And then it goes on from there. And I mean, hey, that's interesting to point out, because that's exactly what you see going on. One day it's A, then it's B, then it's 3, then it's 5, then it's 28, then it's back to C and D, and then back to A. So the reports are not even adding up. Like if they have no military, they have no air force, they have nothing, then what do you have to negotiate with? They don't have any leadership. Who are you negotiating with? And why do you need to negotiate? All right. So anyway, moving on to the next one here. Not many articles today, but interesting ones nonetheless. Now, this is, as it says, the International Energy Agency revises 2026 forecast global oil supply to plunge below demand this year. Okay. And once that happens, because once you have the whole concept of demand and supply, when you have supply that is lower than demand, you start to have a bigger problem on your hand, right? You have a bigger problem on your hand because now there's not enough to go around. And then it gets to the point where, remember, you're dealing, right, with a usable resource. This is something that you consume. So when you use it and it's not being replenished as fast, today you may say you may have 10 people and you have enough to serve or service 10 people. Tomorrow, you may only have enough to service 5 people. The day after that, you may only have enough to service 1 person. And then eventually you don't have enough for anything at all. You see? So the problem with this is it starts off with, hey, we only have a few months of runway. Then it gets cut, then it gets cut, then it gets cut, and people start to get more and more desperate because now the things that they use on a day-to-day basis are affected. Their daily life is affected because they don't have the tools and resources that supply their artificial life that they're living. Okay, and when I say that, I'm referring mainly here to Babylon. So it says global oil demand is set to exceed supply in the current year amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. See, so now you have the perfect scapegoat, right? The perfect one to blame, I should say, for all of this. You have this conflict, this Middle East conflict that is to blame for the economy doing bad, for gas prices going up, fertilizer, right? Food prices going up, and so many other things. And that's not like something that you can just, point a finger at just one person or another. People are divided on the matter, but it's still going on. And they have a lot of options to sort of mess around with when it comes to using this as a catalyst to drive the world into further chaos. Because by not even doing anything, which is kind of what they're doing, just buying time, even while doing that, trouble still continues to brew, right? So it says here, reversing previous projections of a surplus, oil price reports citing the latest IEA data. So that proves the point all the more that we've been saying. Today, the forecast may say one thing, tomorrow it's another, because you're dealing with things that are constantly changing, right? So, just like it says, this report reversed the previous projections. So they may come out and say something today, warning about, we may not have enough for the next 3 months, and then 2 weeks later they may come out and say, look, 3 months, we may not have enough for the next 2 weeks, because that's how fluid the matter is. It says, with Hormuz tanker traffic still restricted, cumulative supply losses from Middle East Gulf producers already exceed 1 billion barrels, with more than 14 million barrels per day of oil now shut in. An unprecedented supply shock, said the agency, which advises industrialized countries. And more, the consumers are going to start to feel this more and more as it picks up momentum, right? As the shock starts to permeate through more and more sectors, people are going to feel that a bit more. Not even a bit more, a lot more. Global oil stocks are depleting at a record pace as supply losses from disruptions to flows via the Strait of Hormuz keep mounting. Producers and consumers are responding to the market signals, with Atlantic crude oil exports surging and refiners cutting runs. And you have also shipment, right, that is being delayed, okay, also because of this. So there's a whole lot of different factors at play here, and best believe it's going to lead into a time of sorrows, as the Lord said. So lastly here, U.S. wheat crop forecast to hit half-century low as drought hits breadbasket, right? You can think of Isaiah 19. That also goes into that, about the water's failing. Chicago wheat futures surge on Tuesday, hitting 2-year highs after the USDA's latest WASDE report signaled a much tighter U.S. supply outlook than traders had anticipated. See, and you keep hearing that again. It was much either worse or more than they anticipated, because when you make a forecast, you need certain information, right? And the second that information you base your forecast on changes, or some projection changes beyond what you cut out wiggle room for, or what you expected, you need to revise that projection. If a car is going at a certain, rate, right, certain miles per hour, you can deduce, okay, based on the rate at which the car is driving, it'll reach its destination at this time. That's how GPS work, right? It goes based on, okay, how fast are you going? What is the average time? And sometimes you'll see when it says 12 minutes to get to your destination, you drive maybe 2 more miles, and now it drops down to like 5 minutes, right? So if traffic, if there's traffic, or if there's no traffic, or you're driving and then traffic starts to build up, the forecast or the estimation changes. So likewise, when you're dealing with these real world events and things keep happening, and then they're talking about peace, then they're not, and they're threatening each other, and then all of these things are factoring in, and it's causing the forecast that they gave you before to have to change, and it's changing for the worse. Production stress across America's breadbasket is now converging with a mega drought and mounting fertilizer constraints. So not just the drought, but the fertilizer constraints adding to that, adding upward pressure on prices at a time when global food prices are rising. You see that? The compound effect of negativity. And who's going to pay for that? Whoever's trying to eat. Due to poor crop health and a record low planted area, the United States will produce the smallest wheat volume since 1972. Now, don't get it twisted and think, wheat? I don't go to the store to buy wheat. When do I go to the store to buy wheat? No, you may not go to the store to buy wheat per se. Some people do, but you may not need to. But there are things you go to the store to buy that needs wheat to be made, and it contains wheat. And so you think, oh, it's just wheat. Yeah, I don't buy wheat anyway. But then there's other things that you eat or consume that uses it, and then those things are now low, or they're no more in stock, and you're wondering why. 2026 winter wheat output, 67% of total output. by class is seen at the lowest levels since all winter 1965, hard red winter 1957, soft red winter 2020. So what you're starting to see is the time like never before sort of alarms being sounded, right? Oh, we're facing levels that we haven't seen before, or levels that pass even the worst time that we had seen, in history, and blase, blase, blah. Okay. And based off of this last article, right, I'm going to jump here to 2nd Ezra 16 and 22. And it reads, "For many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine, and the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy." You see that? So it's already prophesied that there are going to be a lot of people on the earth, not just America, but on the earth, that die of famine. That includes here in the West, the Western Hemisphere. Okay, this is for those that are destined, all right, for judgment, that is. And those that manage to escape that, maybe you're not in a condition to where you are destined to die by famine, but there's going to be another means waiting for you. So you're going to have people going from the luxury, the undesirable luxury of making mukbang videos, where you just have food in such abundance that you go online and you buy an unhealthy amount of junk food, and then you never see them doing that with vegetables, right? Or like healthy foods. No. Unhealthy amount of junk food, turn on the camera with your nasty ass, and then just get on there making sound, y'all gotta try this. That's what they do. And they're gonna go from that to eating each other, or starving to death, or dying by some disease because their immune system is cooked because they have no food to eat. That's the real life shock that's going to happen. So all these people that take it for granted, because when they stuff in their face, they're not thinking about the Lord. They're not worried about them not being able to do this anymore. They have the luxury to the point where not only can they can get their daily bread, they can go above and beyond to do stupid videos about it. And the Lord is going to make sure he fixes all of that in a nice and at least to him a satisfying way when he brings that judgment. So anyway, with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham